And I have described Narendra Modi in columns and in the new edition of my book as Indira Gandhi on steroids. But let's assume everything that Mr. Amit Shah or Mr. Katil or anyone else says about Tipu is correct. Why should the Muslims of Karnataka in the 21st century answer for that? Savarkar was not part of the Jansangh or the RSS. He had no connection with what the antecedent organizations of the BJP. They appropriate him because no one in the RSS was really actively involved in the freedom struggle.
Hello everyone and welcome to this episode of No Filter with Dhanya Rajendran. I'm not going to give a long introduction of today's guest, but it is author and historian Ramachandra Guha. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us in this discussion. In the new edition of your book, India After Gandhi, you have described the BJP system. What is this BJP system?
So that's a reference to the term Congress system used by the political scientist Rajni Kothari in a book published in 1970. So India got independence in 1947, and for the first 2 decades the Congress was dominant in the centre and in the states. Of course, the communist won in Kerala in 1957 and the DMK in Tamil Nadu in what was then Madras in 1967. But by and large, the Congress was dominant politically, ideologically, socially. It dominated the national discourse. It set the terms of the national discourse. It had towering leaders like Nehru and of course later on Indira Gandhi. So it was a one-party dominant system, which meant there were other parties. There were the socialists, there was the Jansangh, there were the communists, there were regional parties, but they were fragmented, they were disunited, and they were not particularly effective. Then from after 1977, when Indira Gandhi and the Congress lost for the first time, we entered a period of more vigorous multi-party competition through the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s. We had many different state governments run by many different parties. At the centre, though, there was an aberration in 1984 when the Congress got 400 seats on the basis of a kind of a sympathy vote after Indira Gandhi's assassination. It was a proper multi-party system. And there were two coalitions, a Congress-led coalition and then a BJP coalition. After 2014, it has again become a kind of single-party dominant system, with the BJP winning comfortable majorities in 2014 and 2019. The BJP in control of many major states, but not all major states. So there are still parts of India that are under non-BJP rule. But it's a one-party dominant system, and in that sense, it's very similar to how the Congress was in the first 2 decades of independence, and different from, for example, if you take a country many of your viewers would know well, the United States. The Republicans and the Democrats are, it could be 55-45 here and there, either in Washington or in the different states. But just imagine either the Democrats or the Republicans have a substantial majority in the Congress and the Senate and control 40 out of the 50 American states. We are somewhere like that. So in that sense, it's a distorted democracy, biased with power, ideology, authority, skewed in favor of one dominant party. It used to be the Congress, now it's the BJP, hence I called it the BJP system.
But still, at the end of the day, the BJP supporters would say it is still a democracy where people are voting this government to power, the system into power, right?
So, in the second edition of my book, which was published in 2017, I called India an election-only democracy. What I mean by that is, a party wins an election. And this is not just the BJP. It could be the Narendra Modi in Delhi, it could be Mamata Banerjee in West Bengal. For the 5 years that party is in power, they are not really held accountable. In a mature democracy, institutions like the legislature, the press, the judiciary, the bureaucracy have to be independent and hold power to account. It's not as if you win an election and for the next 5 years you can do what you want. You can ride roughshod over your opposition, you can jail activists, you can tweak the laws. And that's what has happened in India. We are an election-only democracy. That was the phrase I used in 2017. Now today, in 2023, we may not even be an election-only democracy, because if you look at what happened in our own state, Karnataka, in 2018, where, through inducements, 18, 20 legislators were made to defect. The same thing has happened in Maharashtra, the making and breaking of governments, in Manipur, in Goa, in Madhya Pradesh, during the COVID pandemic. In fact, the COVID The lockdown was held up only so that BJP government propped up by defectors was sworn in. So even elections are no longer sacrosanct. Then also you have the whole issue of electoral bonds, which is an absolute scandal. In fact, personally, I'm deeply dismayed that the Supreme Court hasn't heard the court because this case, because in no other democracy would you have secretive funding of this kind, which absolutely benefits the ruling party. So even our democratic credentials are increasingly, less robust than they were. So, and this is something every Indian should worry about. If all our institutions function on the whims of the ruling party, and look at the Enforcement Directorate, 95% of their cases are opposition politicians. People of other parties who have serious allegations against them, including the Assam Chief Minister, Himanta Biswa Sarma. As soon as they defect to the BJP, they say this is a Ganga Snan. So, actually, regardless of which party you belong to, one should worry about the degradation of Indian institutions. Now, I'll make one last point, Dhanya. This has happened before under Indira Gandhi. When Indira Gandhi was in power, the bureaucracy was compromised, the judiciary was compromised, the press was silenced. And I have described Narendra Modi in columns and in the new edition of my book as Indira Gandhi on steroids. And I think that's a very, very apt way of looking at him. And every Indian concerned about our democracy, those who are as old as me, who remember how Indira Gandhi damaged institutions and how long it took for those institutions to revive, whether it be the press or the judiciary or the bureaucracy, or younger Indians who have read about the emergency and what Indira Gandhi did to suborn institutions to create a personality cult around herself, like the way Modi is now, should worry about the direction the country is taking, regardless of which party you support.
So, since you spoke about Indira Gandhi and how the media behaved during the emergency, and you have observed the media then and you're observing the media now, how is it different how the media behaved then? Because we have seen that editors did rebel, there were editors protesting on the roads against Indira Gandhi, but that's not exactly what we are seeing now today, right?
So, the media in Delhi and in the Hindi belt has by and large capitulated. But elsewhere, they are free spaces. So, in the regional language press, in Malayalam, in Bengali, in Marathi, it's not so one-sided. In the digital media, which is why the digital media is now a source of attack from the government, it is worrisome because the mainstream press has capitulated. So, the English language press has by and large become docile and subservient, which is worrying. But what is even more worrying is that the Hindi language press and the Hindi television channels have become lapdogs of the regime, and what is truly terrifying are spreading hatred against minorities day in and day out. Now, our entire social fabric is weakened and threatened by making Muslims and Christians scapegoats and claiming that they're enemies of the nation or agents of Pakistan. And people have called, Arun Shourie called the Hindi channels North Korean TV. Some people have said it's almost Rwandan, like Rwandan radio, polarizing majority and minority community. So I think one day there'll be a reckoning for all this. But outside of the Hindi media, outside the English language press, there are still spaces that are moderately free, and you do have reporters with principle, with determination, who cover real stories, including your wonderful website, and these places should be encouraged to nurture our democracy.
So I'm very glad that you actually differentiated media, because I personally get very offended when people say all media is lapdog media. As I see, there is a differentiation, the way English TV behaves, English print behaves, Hindi TV, Hindi print, and of course the regional languages. I'm very glad that you have clearly laid out those differences. My next question to you is, in the book's new chapter, you have also said that India is becoming a Hindu nation. But isn't that sort of a given, considering the BJP system is in force now?
So it is partially a result of the BJP system being here. It is partially a result of the long afterlife of partition. That when Pakistan was created as a state, first it was created as a homeland for Muslims, and then it became an Islamic republic where the legal framework was defined in terms of the majority community, Muslims. The existence of Pakistan as an Islamic state was always a provocation for radical Hindus in India to make this a Hindu state. Because if they are like that, why not us? And people like Gandhi and Nehru, who tried to argue that whatever Pakistan did to its minorities, India would treat Muslims and Christians and Parsis and Sikhs as equal citizens. Their task has became more and more difficult as the decades progressed and Pakistan became more hardline. So part of the impetus for making India a Hindu nation comes from the ideology of the BJP and the RSS. So it's from inside India. And part of it is the larger environment, and it's not just Pakistan. If you look at South Asia as a whole, South Asia is dominated by majoritarian states. So Sri Lanka and Myanmar are Buddhist majoritarian states, where those who are not Buddhists are effectively treated as less than first-class citizens of the nation. So is Bhutan. Bhutan is also a Buddhist majoritarian state. I mean, non-Buddhists are not treated very well. Pakistan and Bangladesh are Islamic majoritarian states. When Bangladesh was born in 1971, actually the word secularism was in its constitution. You know, there was a visionary lawyer called Kamal Hussain who wrote the constitution of Bangladesh, and Mujibur Rahman and his colleagues believed in equal rights for Hindus and Buddhists. But over a period of time, you can see the Islamic caste and the Islamic radicalism in Bangladesh, and of course the attacks on independent-minded writers like Taslima Nasreen. I mean, it's
geopolitics of
also. I mean, for example, if you see the attacks on Taslima Nasreen, fortunately still alive, but the motivation is very similar to the tragic assassination of our dear friend Gauri Lankesh. That Hindutva radicals killed Gauri Lankesh because he was seen as betraying Hindus. Taslima Nasreen could not live in her own country, even though she's a Muslim, because Islamic radicals said, you're not a true Muslim. So part of it is the broader political environment we live in, and part of it is driven from radical, rabid, bigoted forces within. And part of it is the third reason, which is the corruption and the cronyism of the Congress party. I think the Congress party of today has no relation to the party of Gandhi and Nehru, either in its philosophy or in its practice or in its organization. And all of that has fed into the rise of the BJP.
So now let's talk about what's happening in Karnataka. I've covered many elections here, but I think this is the first time that there's so much of focus on historical figures, Savarkar and Tipu Sultan, for instance. As a historian, how do you perceive this entire discussion? The BJP keeps saying that let's talk about Savarkar and Tipu Sultan. It's an election of Savarkar followers versus Tipu Sultan followers.
So I think there are two aspects to it. I think, first of all, so it's deliberate and systematic. It's a deliberate strategy by the BJP to talk about the past. Now, some would argue it's a cloak for poor performance. I mean, Mr. Bommai's government is not particularly distinguished. There are widespread allegations of corruption. And the evidence of incompetence is rife, not least in the floods that overtook our so-called showpiece of the IT industry last year. And you remember how disastrous the government's handling of it was. So some of it may be a cover for poor performance. They do not have a governance or administrative or welfare record to boast of, so they want to polarize. And they weaponize history for that. Now, Tipu was an 18th century ruler. Tipu was a very complex figure. There are aspects of Tipu where he's actually endowing great Hindu sites like the Sringeri Mutt. There are other aspects of Tipu where he's flaunting his Islamic fundamentalism on his sleeve. He certainly fought the British. In that sense, he was anti-colonial. But even let's assume that all that the BJP ideologues say about Tipu is correct, and he was actually as evil as he is made out, which is of course not the historical truth. The historical truth is much more complex and nuanced. But let's assume everything that Mr. Amit Shah or Mr. Katil or anyone else says about Tipu is correct. Why should the Muslims of Karnataka in the 21st century answer for that? They have no connection with him, with many generations, and they are just using, they are weaponizing the past, distorting the past, weaponizing it to play polarizing politics in the present. So, people ask me, what is Hindutva history? What is this new history that Hindutva is writing? It's very simple. Hindus always good and noble, Muslims always evil and dishonest. That's it. There's nothing more. It's a very black and white, unnuanced portrait. There's nothing about how did people live in the past, what was their architecture like, their clothing, their forms of cultivation, their social relations. History is about all these complex issues. So Hindutva history is a very crude, hate-filled, black and white representation of the past, where Hindus are always represented as good and noble, and Muslims as evil and perfidious and somehow disloyal. And that is being used today. So, and it's terribly dangerous. I mean, history should not be weaponized like this. Let's talk about 2023 and what are the issues facing Hindus and Muslims and Christians and atheists in Karnataka today. That's how civilized democratic politics should be conducted.
It's not just about Tipu Sultan, right? It's also about Savarkar. Recently, Savarkar's picture was unveiled in the Karnataka Assembly in Belgaum. So the BJP is suddenly owning up to Savarkar. They feel that valorizing him will help them.
So Savarkar, again, like Tipu, is a very complex figure. There are many elements. If you look at him in history, there are many elements to his career. So he was a true revolutionary. He was a man of great physical courage who suffered a lot in prison. In his early years, he was a prophet of Hindu-Muslim harmony, and his first major book on the rebellion of 1857 was about Hindu-Muslim harmony. Now, in jail, two things happened. One, he became pro-British and wrote a series of apologies to get himself out. And the second thing that happened was he turned anti-Muslim. Now, there are many theories as to why that happened. But, his life in the round, there are heroic episodes in his early life. There are some rather distasteful episodes in his later life, including his mentoring of Nathuram Godse, who killed Gandhi. But above all, his demonizing of Muslims. In fact, some historians would argue that Savarkar propagated the two-nation theory, namely that Hindus and Muslims could not live together even before Jinnah. Okay. Now, he was a very interesting and complicated figure. He was a very fine writer. He wrote songs which are still sung. So, but essentially, the BJP appropriates Savarkar for two reasons. One is, Savarkar was not part of the Jansangh or the RSS. He had no connection with what the antecedent organizations of the BJP. They appropriate him because no one in the RSS was really actively involved in the freedom struggle in a serious way. When the attack on the BBC took place, the government's, the IT departments, income tax department's raid on the BBC some days ago, there was a very clever tweet by Mahua Maitra, which said, on the second day of the raids, he said, government raids BBC again, that the closest the BJP has got to fighting the British, which I thought was very funny and accurate, because the RSS and stayed completely far away from the freedom struggle. And so did Savarkar in the last period of his life. He was collaborating with the British when the Congress was and Gandhi were involved in the in the Quit India movement. But in the early phase of his life, he was a genuine revolutionary who suffered a lot. So they want to claim him for that reason, because there's no one else they can claim. Now, the other reason they want to claim him was, of course, because of his religious ideology, which is, which is absolutely majoritarian. It's nakedly majoritarian. It was Savarkar who thought up this really pernicious distinction between those Hindus whose place of worship was within their homeland, those Indians, I beg your pardon, whose Pitra Bhumi and Punya Bhumi was here. So Hindus, Sikhs and Jains, their places of worship were in India, and that was also their homeland. And those Indians, namely Christians and Muslims, whose Punya Bhumi was outside their Pitra Bhumi, which meant they were all somehow suspect, because, Christians, Catholics worshipped in Rome, and the Syrian Christians in Antioch, and the Muslims in Makkah and Medina, somehow they were suspect. So Savarkar is, and of course he coined the term Hindutva. So these are the two reasons the BJP likes Savarkar and wants to uphold him. And ultimately, of course, it's a battle for the soul of India. Is India a country where Muslims and Christians have to live at the mercy of Hindus, or is India a country which, regardless of what religion you follow, even if no religion at all, like I'm an agnostic or an atheist, is it all you have to do is, have respect for the constitutional rule of law? So it is a battle for the soul of India. Now, and Savarkar, of course, is clearly on that side.
But why is the Karnataka BJP so obsessed with Savarkar and using his name? What do they gain out of it?
So that's interesting. So I think this has come from the RSS. So incidentally, I should say this. The day that Savarkar's portrait was unveiled in Belgaum, in the assembly, I was told that Bombay was as surprised as anyone else. Now, I don't know if it's true, and that it was the RSS. The RSS is absolutely fanatically committed. And in Maharashtra, Savarkar has many admirers who are not necessarily hardcore Hindutvawadis. Because Savarkar was a wonderful writer in Marathi. You know, he was a playwright, a writer of songs. He was also an important critic of the caste system. I mean, like Gandhi, he
So
could have,
districts bordering Maharashtra, the BJP system.
maybe, but so I don't know whether it will have play in, you know, old Mysore or elsewhere. But essentially, Savarkar is useful to the BJP partly because of his ideology, and partly because, unlike the leaders and cadres of the RSS, he actually was a freedom fighter. At one phase of his life, he was a freedom fighter.
And it's not just historical figures, right? The BJP is very smart at using soft powers like movies, literature, whatever it is, to appropriate and to sort of make sure that they project that.
So they are supreme. I see the thing is, Modi and Shah are absolutely brilliant political operators. You know, they are much more agile and quick at using cultural symbols than anyone in the Congress party. So, which of course makes them in some ways more dangerous because of the ideology. Because the ideology is one of, you know, hate and revenge and Hindu superiority. But they are, I mean, like, you know, Shah's invocation of first RRR and now this Kannada film, you know, they're very clever at all of that. You know, this concept of the vote bank, which was actually the term your viewers should be interested to know. The term was coined by the Kannada sociologist M.N. Srinivas. It's actually, it was coined by him based on his fieldwork in Rampura, which is a village not far from Mandya. And it referred to, that different castes become a vote bank. Now, what the BJP under Modi and Shah has done is has attempted with some success to create the mother of all vote banks, which is the Hindu vote bank. So Hindus must vote as Hindus, and they must vote against other communities. This was explicitly said in UP by Adityanath when he said 80 versus 20. Right. Now, so if even 50%, 60% of the Hindus vote out of a mixture of pride and fear. Pride meaning we own this land, this is our country, we are going to become a great Hindu country. And fear, there are always these dangerous enemies who are either not Hindus, Muslims or Christians, or people like you and me, who are kind of disloyal and allegedly the pay of foreign powers. So mixture of pride and fear will propel Hindus to vote as Hindus, not as citizens who want decent education, decent healthcare, employment, equality for everyone, good public transport, none of that. If that happens, then particularly in three-cornered contests, which are very common in our state, the BJP will win more than half the seats. So that it's a cynical, manipulative, and yet tragically effective electoral ploy.
Cynical, manipulative, and effective.
And often, I hope not always, but often tragically effective. Yeah.
So when we speak about Karnataka, this is the only state where the BJP has come to power in the south. Now, of course, there is Puducherry. So how is Karnataka different that way? For example, Tamil Nadu speaks about the Dravidian movement, Kerala speaks about communist movement. What is it in Karnataka's history which is different, which allows the BJP to come to power here?
So, I mean, I am not an expert particularly on the social structure of Karnataka. But it will be interesting to see, clearly there has been, even the Karnataka BJP has undergone a transformation. I mean, there's a Yeddyurappa BJP and there's a post-Yeddiyurappa BJP. So, Yeddyurappa clearly was uncomfortable with this polarizing politics. It was said of, I remember one Kannada writer used to joke to me saying, Yeddyurappa is a typical congressman, nepotistic and secular. Okay. He also added something else which characterizes a congressman, but I won't, for fear of libel, I won't say that. But he clearly was not anti-Muslim. I mean, either in his constituency, Shikaripura, or generally otherwise. He was someone who wanted to take everyone along. Of course, he may have had his own Hindu faith, he may have gone to a temple and all of that, right? So, but he didn't build his politics on hatred of Muslims. Nor did Bombay. I mean, Bombay comes from the Royist tradition. I mean, he comes from his father, S.R. Bombay, was a follower of M.N. Roy, who was a progressive atheist. And he himself, both S.R. Bombay and Basavaraj were in the Janta Parivar. And it's even said that he almost joined the Congress before Yeddiyurappa got into BJP. But after joining the BJP, he's undergone a conversion, somewhat similar to Hemanta Biswa Sarma. You know, he's decided to survive in the BJP. I have to become a hardliner. Now, and Yeddiyurappa really built the party from nowhere. Now, I think because Yeddiyurappa is nepotistic and wants the future of his children to be safeguarded, he has made a kind of compact with the current BJP and not pushed back against this blatantly majoritarian edge to their politics. He himself, I don't think, and would have endorsed. Even now, he probably does not endorse. Right? He is very reluctant to go along with it. So, is it? Will it succeed? I mean, was Yeddiyurappa's more accommodative, more, shall we say, soft Hindutva, more palatable to the kind of pluralistic, diverse cultural mosaic that is Karnataka? Or has Karnataka actually shifted in the way in which Gujarat and UP and Assam have? We have to see.
So you use the word pluralistic to describe Karnataka, but if you look at what's been happening over the past few decades, there are certain areas of Karnataka which have been communal in nature, right? So does that word really describe the entire state?
Yes, in the coast particularly.
Yes.
In the coast, and of course but in the coast particularly, and at the coast, of course, there is also an issue of Islamic radicalism, which cannot be denied, right? In other parts, it's more manufactured. For example, the whole Eidgah controversy of Baba Buddha and Giri Hills, or against Urdu, most of it is manufactured. And again, fear and insecurities. So essentially, if you look at the history of democratic politics the world over, elections are fought either on fear or on hope. Either a leader says, I will give you a better future, a safer, more prosperous, more egalitarian, a more contented future, or the leader says, I will protect you against your historic enemies, So I think that's really where we are going. I mean, and of course, the BJP tries to play both games. So Shah and Katil and C.T. Ravi and Ashwath Narayan attempt to stoke fear, to polarize, to paint the hard-working, law-abiding, upright, patriotic, working-class Muslims of Karnataka as somehow connected to some allegedly evil medieval ruler. I mean, this will, distort and damage our social fabric. Whoever wins the election, this is not the way you should, build the future of the state. So that is my worry, that the kind of residue and the poison it will leave behind will be there for decades after all the people I mentioned are dead and gone. All these polarizing politicians I mentioned are dead and gone. It will still be there.
Does it worry you when these politicians, especially from the BJP, keep speaking about rewriting history? That's the word they use, right? We will rewrite history. On the other side, there is this impression being created among people that history is very one-sided, that history was written by left historians more than anyone else, and therefore what we are learning, what we are hearing is just one side to history.
No, it is true. There's some truth to that Indian history writing was dominated by Marxists. And again, for the record, I have been a critic of Marxists longer than I've been a critic of Hindutva, because they also have a one-sided point of view. But what is Hindutva history? As I said, it is really, there are kind of three themes to it. When it comes to ancient India, India always led the world. We led the world in mathematics, in medicine, in philosophy, in literature, in poetry, and we were the greatest. When it comes to medieval India, it is Hindu rulers like Shivaji, always good, Muslim rulers like Tipu and Aurangzeb, always bad. When it comes to modern India, Nehru and Gandhi bad, Savarkar good. That's about it. There is no rich. History is about, there are many dimensions to history. It is about how people live, how they struggle, how they love, what kind of homes they build, what kind of economic system they practice, what kind of culture they create. None of this is reflected in I mean, it's a very crude and impoverished version of history. History should excite, history textbooks, history writing should excite children about the many dimensions of their past, about all different aspects of life, not just seek to portray one group of Indians as evil and untrustworthy. So, I mean, it is really a very base, limited, superficial, and I have to say, hate-filled understanding of history that these people are propagating.
So, before I move on to my questions about politics, the last section, I have a quick question here. So, you spoke about the Hindutva version of history and how it is only three segments. But when I report from different states, I see that it's not just the BJP or the people who are believing the BJP who talk about this anymore. Like the Christians, for example, the Syrian Christians in Kerala,
Yeah.
they also have taken this particular route of the evil Muslim. And because you said history is also about loving, it's about how people love, how people live. Love, for example, is a huge.
Yeah, but also, I said the different dimensions of life. So there is economic life, there's cultural life, there's social life, there's literary life, there are institutions, there are laws. All of that, is part of the complexity of past societies and present societies. So just to look at it through one narrow prism and also distorted prism, I think, it's like, as I said, it's an attempt to stoke fear. I have not studied Kerala. I mean, Syrian Christians are, a very prosperous community. Why should they feel threatened by anyone? Puzzles me, but there we are.
Another thing I want to ask you is something very interesting that someone told me the other day, that one reason why Karnataka could be behaving very differently from other southern states is also the influence that Gandhi had on Karnataka, calling it Ramarajya, and the power that he had over many organizations, including even the Dalit Sangha. So, do you believe Gandhi's influence is also one reason why Karnataka behaves differently from Tamil Nadu or Kerala, for example, which have had other movements during that time?
I mean, I think certainly Gandhi was more influential in Karnataka than in other states. And also Karnataka didn't have at least in the recent period, the 19th and 20th century, didn't have the vigorous anti-caste, anti-patriarchy movements that Kerala and Tamil Nadu did, right? And also Karnataka was of course created from four different parts and it has all these complications. I mean, the Dalit movement is very interesting in Karnataka because unlike in Maharashtra, where Ambedkar and Gandhi are treated as polar opposites. Actually, Dalit intellectuals here, like D.R. Nagaraj or Siddhalingaya or Devanur Mahadeva, most importantly, find ways of incorporating both Ambedkar and Gandhi. I mean, I find that very interesting and persuasive because if you want to reform the caste system, you need pressure from below, you need autonomous, vigorous action by Dalits, and you also need enough upper caste Hindus who recognize the evil of the caste system. So actually Ambedkar and Gandhi in some ways, despite the differences, were complementary, And I think Devanur argues that very persuasively. And that's one of the things I find appealing about the Dalit movement in Karnataka, that they find ways of incorporating both, Gandhi and Ambedkar.
So you do agree that the way Gandhi treated Karnataka or his influence in Karnataka is also one reason why the state behaves a bit differently from the other southern states?
I can't say, because I can't say. I mean, obviously, Gandhi would have totally disapproved of Hindutva. So, so today Gandhi may have had more things to praise in Tamil Nadu and Kerala than in Karnataka.
You have been speaking about Devanur's book. You have praised it many times. Why do you think the book is so appealing? And why do you think it's important?
So I think there are three reasons. One is he writes in Kannada. So his is the voice of the people. I say, unlike someone like me who writes in English. Right. Secondly, he is born in a truly underprivileged home. Thirdly, he has understood it from within, right? And fourthly, he's a person of great principle. He's not an attention seeker. He does things because he believes in them. So I think it resonated for all these. Unlike some other writers, who do things partly for attention or partly for state awards. For example, he has refused state awards. He's never wanted to be, get a state award or be like some other writers, be chairman of the State Sahitya Academy Committee or the Kannada Authority. He's a person of great integrity and rectitude. So I think, I've actually never met him. I've read some of his writings in translation. I have heard 2 or 3 of his speeches. And he's a very admirable figure. And he's because he's so rooted and authentic. You can't say he's a Congress agent. You can't say he's a CIA, he's a Western agent. You can't say he's an elitist. You can't say he's a pseudo-secular because he's completely rooted and grounded and understands the whole society from within. So and his book is short and pungent and powerful, and I'm glad it's being widely read.
To today there are a lot of right-wing intellectuals, right-wing historians. They are continuously on the internet. If you listen to their podcast, if you watch their videos, they're also compelling. They are actually giving the reader, the viewer, another side to history which they claim is there. So do you find that this is confusing the people of the country? How do you look at this whole development?
Broadly, I welcome the emergence of a right-wing argumentative class, because I think a mature democracy needs left, center, right, a top-down view, a bottom-up view, a view from Delhi, a view from the provinces. You need women, Dalits, marginal communities writing history. You need many kinds of history. And we didn't really have small, so broadly I welcome it. But I think there's an issue with many, not all right-wing, so-called right-wing or pro-nationalist or pro-Hindutva intellectuals, that they attach themselves to politicians. And that's true of filmmakers too, right-wing filmmakers too.
Party politics.
No, individual politicians, not just party politics. I mean, if to promote your book, you have to take a photograph with Narendra Modi or Amit Shah, or to promote your film, you have to do that, and with Adityanath too. It's demeaning for an artist. It actually also shows you don't have the confidence that my book or film will stand on its own. I need Narendra Modi to sponsor it, and then all the bucks to buy it, all the government departments to buy it, or if it's a film, for all the state governments to say tax-free, right? So, I think it's very important for anyone in the creative field, whether it's an artist, a historian, a playwright, a filmmaker, to be absolutely independent of politicians and not identify with them. You can have political views, that's different. You can be left-wing, right-wing, vote for Congress, vote for BJP, vote for JDS, but artistic integrity demands this kind of distance from politicians. So that's why I never.
So that's the same accusation which can be leveled at the other side, right?
Yes. So
you attach the Congress and the
of
Congress
course. For example, if I may just say something which I have not written about in print. Rahul Gandhi invited me for the yatra. I wrote him a letter saying I can't join because it would mean endorsing you. And I'm sorry. Thank you for the courtesy. And given my long-standing criticism of dynastic culture, it's particularly touched that you want to invite me, but I don't want to. And I think that's something where to write a book and then to go and have Narendra Modi take a photograph and put it on Twitter, or Amit Shah, who recently released, Amit Shah recently released a book on so-called revisionist history of the freedom struggle, Adityanath, or filmmakers. I think that shows of course it shows opportunism. But I think more than that, it shows a lack of confidence in your own work. And I think that's what I would, would be my comment on this new trend. You're right. It may have been there with Congress historians, communist historians may have gone and have, taken a photograph in Bengal with Jyoti Basu, but that doesn't justify this.
So I'll move to the last segment, and because you spoke about dynastic politics, that is the question I want to ask you. I've heard in many of your speeches, in your presentations, lectures, you saying that the Congress party should die in India.
I've never said that. I've said it should become non-dynastic. Yogendra Yadav said it should die, and now, of course, he's very much part of the Congress ecosystem. I said it should become non-dynastic.
The final thing I want to ask you is about politics. You have been a critique of the Congress, especially of the dynastic politics which the party perpetuates. Has your thinking changed now? Do you think differently now?
No, I think it's a fundamental philosophical and moral criticism I have of dynastic politics, not just in the Congress party. In many other parties. For example, when Stalin inducted his son into the cabinet a couple of months ago, what kind of signal did he send to the other capable ministers in his party that they can never become chief minister because the son is there? Similarly, KCR and his son in Andhra, or what Uddhav Thackeray did when he was chief minister. So, to convert political parties into family firms is a way of degrading Indian democracy. It is true that many professions run in the family line. A lawyer's child becomes a lawyer, a doctor's child becomes a lawyer, a doctor, but that's within, that's not impacting society as a whole. It's not impacting.
So you're saying that the Congress as a party can become stronger, but the family politics should decrease.
No, let me put this. So, among the aspects of the decline and the degradation of Indian democracy are that our political parties have declined and degraded in one of two ways. Either they have become family firms, like the Congress party, or they have become personality cults like BJP and Aam Aadmi party, which is a cult of Kejriwal.
BJP also has a lot of dynastic politics.
But not at the top level. Not at the top level. I mean, I wrote a piece where I said Shah, Nadda, and Modi are the three top leaders of the Congress of the BJP. In the Congress, it is Gandhi, Gandhi, and Gandhi. Today, there is a news report as to Sonia under the new rules. Rahul will be a member of the CWC because he's a past president. Sonia will be a leader, but how do we get a member? But how do we get Priyanka in? I mean, so that kind of at the top level is absolutely pernicious, and I think, or you have personality cults, and both are antithetical to democratic functioning. You don't have it in other democracies. You may have the occasional son, like one Bush, also gets into politics, or Clinton's wife gets into politics. But you don't have the whole party being captured by a single family, where succession always passes.
In the case of the take on the BJP system.
You see, I don't. That's not my job. My job is to understand, analyze, critique. My job is not to change society. My job is to study and provide a mirror to where society is going. And the fact that in India, one half of our political parties are family firms, not just the Congress. If you consider the Akalis are the second oldest party in India. They were a party of farmers' rights, regional pride. Look at the DMK. The DMK was a party of caste equality, gender equality, social welfare. None of these were meant to be family firms. One half are family firms, the other half are personality cults, which is BJP, Aam Aadmi Party, Trinamool Congress, Naveen Patnaik and his BJD, and that is harmful for democracy. So in that sense, it's a larger intellectual and moral argument I'm making. It's not against Rahul Gandhi. Or the Gandhis per se. It is simply pointing out how converting parties either into family firms or into personality cults damages the ethos of democracy.
So my final question to you, in fact, I want to stop on a optimistic note, is that the last few years we've also seen resistance. We have seen various movements, whether it's the farmers' protest, whether it's the anti-CA protest, civil society, people are speaking about certain things. So do you believe that resistance will also be there, no matter how powerful the political system against it is?
There is, and there will be resistance that is political, there will be resistance that is intellectual, there will be resistance that is civil roots, that is grassroots, that is from civil society, that is non-party, like the farmers' protest, the anti-CA protests, and so on. And there will be, hopefully, whatever is left of the independent media will, maintain its robustness and its spine. And this contestation will continue. And nothing is permanent. I mean, the Congress system was not permanent, and the BJP system is not permanent.
Nothing is permanent. Neither is the BJP system permanent, nor is the Congress system. That's what historian Ramachandra Guha is telling us. And it's been an interesting conversation with the historian, especially as the Karnataka elections are nearing and historical figures are taking center stage. Thank you for listening into this week's No Filter with Dhanya Rajendran. Do join us next week. Thank you very much.